there's not a whole lot of good news in what we just talked about. Land that produces thorns and thistles is worthless and is in danger of being cursed. In the end, it will be burned. And that we're talking about a word picture here, a metaphor for people who, if they chose, would have, well, like the first part of this word picture in verse 7, land that drinks in the rain, often falling on it, and that produces a crop useful to those for whom it is farmed, receives a blessing from God. But the other side of the coin is, well, it's ugly. In the end, it will be burned. I've thought about this. Maybe it's because we're at the first of the year, and 2024 had some wonderful high points, but I do not regret turning the page and moving on. I read on like Facebook and X and stuff that it's a new year. Let's run into it with enthusiasm, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm running into it, but it's not because I'm running toward it. I'm running away from 2024. It was, on several levels, it was not a great year for me. And so I'm reflecting on that, and I'm thinking about, what have I done in terms of my life and my productivity? I talked about that before. And then it occurred to me, this is a reoccurring thought. I don't think I can have it often enough. In the end, it's all going to burn. There's only two things that are going to last into eternity. That's my soul and God's word. The grass withers and the flowers fade, but the word of the Lord stands forever. It is eternal. So is my soul. Everything else, all of my achievements, all of my acquisitions and my accumulation and my worldly goods, there's not much to burn, but it's all going to burn. I would much rather it all burn because it's no longer necessary or needed than it all burn because I was, the second kind of land. Okay, go on, Steve. And then in verse 9, he says, even though we speak like this, dear friends, we are convinced of better things in your case, the things that have to do with salvation. Well, paused there last time and said we're going to, pick that back up and move forward. Well, let's talk about what are things that have to do with salvation. Top of the list for me is grace. You don't earn your salvation. You don't do anything to keep your salvation. And this is a tough tension because if I am saved, this is a hard line to draw, and I'm not, it shouldn't be me that draws the line on it, but when I am saved, because I am saved, my life will reflect a different value system and have a different trajectory. I don't do good things. I don't be good in an effort to somehow earn what has already been given to me. It doesn't make sense, and it won't work. One of the problems that I experienced before I encountered grace and began to understand it, I still don't really understand it, but I have at least begun. Anyway, one of the difficulties of this be good enough, try harder, obey better, do more right things, do less bad things. One of the big problems with that is, how do I know when I've done enough? Right? I mean, I grew up with the thought that if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. I had no idea. I really did. Even after I accepted salvation, was baptized as a kid, I still had this sense that, I don't know, am I going to make it? I carried that into my adult life. Try harder, be better. Prove yourself. It's awful. I'm grateful that I don't live there anymore, but I have moments where I drift back into that old 50-year-old habit of trying harder to be good enough. All right, the first thing about salvation is you can't be good enough to get it. Not possible. So, it's all about God's grace. And then it becomes about my receptivity, my acceptance, my living within God's grace and living with the empowerment of His grace. So that the coin gets flipped from try harder so you can stay saved to you are saved. Now, live that way. I was thinking about I generally make New Year's resolutions, but this year I didn't. I didn't make any resolutions. But I had a Facebook friend who every year they select a word for the year. You know me, I'll never be able to select a word, but I did have a phrase that came to mind for this year: act as if. In a way, it's fake it till you make it, but on another level, it is engaging my behaviors to reflect a reality. So the act as if for me is act as if you really were saved by grace. Act as if you trust God. This is the big challenge for me this year. Act as if you trust. What does that look like? You probably don't have that as an issue, but I do. And it goes back to the things that have to do with salvation. Because the big thing that has to do with salvation is God's grace. Well, there are other things as well, which I think come down on the side of when you are saved, your choices, your behaviors, your attitudes, your thoughts will reflect the fact, they will demonstrate the fact that you are saved by grace. Well, I just poke you and say, what else about the things that have to do with salvation come to your mind? Verse 10, an assurance. God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown Him as you have helped His people and continue to help them. Well, that kind of sounds like God's keeping track of my good works. Okay, frame it up in this what I think is the most important thing about salvation. It's not my effort that gains it for me. It's God's grace. But because of his grace, God notices and he doesn't forget. He will not forget your work. And let's be real, effort won't go away. The need for effort will not go away. But it's, and I know this, I mean, you already get this, but I gotta say it again. It is not effort in order to get grace, but effort that is empowered by grace. It's because of grace, not in order to get it. But God's not unjust. He won't forget that. He doesn't miss it. There is effort. There is work. And the love you have shown him as you have helped his people and continue to help them. This is an interesting point. I demonstrate my love for God as I help his people. It's interesting. And in the context of the letter here, the Jews living abroad have had on several occasions sent financial gifts back to Jerusalem to support and assist God's family there, which in the earliest years after the day of Pentecost was Jews who had come to Jesus. So there was a specific act of love for God expressed by these contributions. It's not, the writer is not talking about this emotional, I have such a place in my heart for those people. He's not talking about this warm, fuzzy thing. He's talking about, here, I could have used this, but I'm going to give it. And it's as though I give it to God and it benefits his people. I'm going to make an assumption here, and it could be, I might be wrong, but I think I'm probably about right. Most of us, maybe even all of us, are giving to our church weekly or monthly or bi-weekly. We're and that's a good thing. I've been blessed by being able to make those kinds of contributions. But it's just a little shift, but it's a shift worth thinking about. I'm not giving, okay, well, you got to think about it on two levels. On the highest level, I am not giving my tithe plus to the Crossing Midtown. I'm giving it to God through the Crossing Midtown. And my desire is that the kingdom, the people of God will be benefited by that. That's a little thing, but it's a big thing. And then he goes on in verse 11, we want each of you to show the same diligence to the very end, so that what you hope for may be fully realized. We do not want you to become lazy, but to imitate those who through faith and patience inherit what has been promised. There's a lot in that. Too much for the 20 seconds I've got left, so I'm going to stop right here and we'll pick it up next time on Soul Care with Stevie.